Good morning. Welcome back to another edition of the pre-market post game with yours truly, Dex the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we put in your hand each and every trading day. Well. We have an exciting morning that is shaping up here today. A lot of things going on, a lot of things we're going to need to talk about. So at this time, you're probably going to want to go. Make sure you got your cup of coffee and get yourself ready to go because we need to talk. Starting off with the overnight market. So we got the Dow futures now down 36 points to 29,054. We got the NASDAQ 100 down 180 points at 12,231.5. Even the S&P 500 down 20.5 points at 3558 and 3/4. Russell My Hustle down 5.6 points at 1586.9. Bitcoin Futures Composite Index is down $610, trading at 10,850. The overnight low was around 10,660, right above that 10,500 target that I told you about. It looked like the market had made a decision. I said, we're at a crossroads. Bitcoin's either going to 12.5 or it's going to go to 10.5. And then it made a move the next day and said, look, I'm trying to go to 12.5, hit that 12,000 mark, one more again. And then it said, psych, I'm afraid of heights. And now it fell down and it's on its way to the 10.5 level. You can't make this stuff up, people. Markets move in predictable ways if you know how to read the algorithms. And the only way you'll know how to do that is if you're armed with the PulseWave price trigger report. Nat gas up 6 cents at $2.55. Crude oil down $1, trading at $40.50 a barrel. Long bond is up 8.30 seconds, trading at 177 and 15.30 seconds. Gold futures are up $1.30, trading at $1,946 even. Silver up 4 cents, trading at $27.43 even. The US dollar index is off pretty much just like unchanged. It's sitting at 92.84. The euro dollar is up 13 pips at 118.41. Pound sterling down 45 pips at 132.78. You got the Aussie down 16 pips at 73.01. Canadian dollar is up 66 pips at 131.13. Euro yen is up 2 pips at 125.90. Dollar yen up 17 pips at 106.36. And the Kiwi is off 39 pips at 67.32. Soybeans up 3.5 at 965.5. Corn down 1 at 357 3/4. And wheat is off a quarter at 558. Fireworks are popping off in a couple of these markets because news came out and it was quite abysmal. We'll get into that in a minute. France reveals fresh stimulus worth 100 billion euros, almost 4% of its GDP. 4% of its GDP, and bigger than any other European economy. France is pumping in a fresh dose of stimulus worth 100 billion euros, which is about 118 billion US dollars, to rescue the economy from the pandemic-induced lockdown earlier this year, Reuters reported. So, Oatly vegan milk faces activist anger after Trump-supporting billionaire Blackstone acquired a stake. Vegan milk brand Oatly is facing activist pressure after private equity firm Blackstone, headed by Trump-supporting billionaire Steven Schwarzman, acquire a stake in the company. Bernstein breaks down 4 reasons why red-hot growth stocks will keep soaring and outlines how to build a safe portfolio designed to take advantage. For the last few years, grumbling investors have been saying there is no alternative to U.S. stocks. Now, TINA, known as TINA, might be slimming down to giant growth stocks. China has successfully kneecapped Trump's TikTok ban as sales talks hit a speed bump. Beijing has successfully thrown a spanner into the acquisition talks between TikTok and various prospective American buyers, according to multiple reports from Reuters, the Wall Street Journal, and Bloomberg. All right, a $7 billion fund manager breaks down why the perfect storm is brewing for investors most love stocks as the election nears and shares 4 trades to capitalize on their downfall. Very interesting. All right, so stocks are mixed. Asian stocks closed down. European stocks are up. U.S. futures are pointing to a lower open. And earnings coming in, we got Capgemini and Sofina. Q2 20 earnings are coming in. On the economic front, we had the U.S. non-farm productivity and initial jobless claims came out at 8:30, and it was whack. There's no other way to say it. It was whack. 881,000 Americans filed for first-time unemployment benefits last week after disappointing. Oh man, this is 881,000, y'all. I can't just gloss over that and keep going. I gotta stop for a minute. 881,000. Good grief. So after disappointingly staying above 1 million in the prior week, economists expected less than 1,950,000 Americans to file for first-time unemployment benefits in the last week, and the final print was better than expected, below 1 million, but it's 881,000. That's like saying, you know what? I'm going to chop off your hand instead of chopping off your whole arm. You're still chopping, though. Doesn't matter. Hand or arm, there's one is not better than the other. You're still chopping. It's still going to be painful, and it's still going to be a bloody mess. Now, according to Bloomberg, 6 months into this situation, driven by the government's forced lockdown, this is still over 4 times larger than the average weekly claims data pre-COVID. Once again, this is 4 times larger than the average weekly claims data pre-COVID. California saw by far the worst jump in claims, while Florida, Georgia, and Michigan all saw drops in claims. No wonder California is thinking about reparations. Continuing claims improved again, dropping by 1.238 million last week, according to Bloomberg. Remember, these numbers are completely useless since the seasonal adjustments are now completely different and are not restated historically, thus making the week-to-week comps like apples to carrots. So it is what it is. We know it. The bottom line is it's bad. It's bad. It's whack. All right, so we got the opening bell going on here. People are getting dusted who do not have subscriptions to the PulseWave reports. They're getting smacked around this morning, getting their faces ripped off. They're getting taken to the woodshed. NASDAQ, the market just won't stop. It looks like it's stopping this morning. You know, that's the risk you take, though. You know, you keep buying until they pull the rug out. And this morning they decided, well, we're going to pull the rug out. And did they pull the rug out? Yeah, they pulled the rug out. They said, we don't want to play anymore. And so they stopped playing. And now the market is pulling back. Now, don't get it twisted. We've seen this before. By the close today, the NASDAQ could be up 300 as far as we know. But what is it that we do know? Again, like I told you, intraday price inflection points are critical in these situations. Critical. What did we give you last night? We gave you the alarm. All right. We gave you another alarm that we had a crash alert coming into today's trading for the mighty Bitcoin futures composite index. If you listened and paid attention, then you would be able to benefit from said analysis. That's what the end of day reports are for. Moving on, we have another thing to talk about, and that's this labor market, man. What's the reality? What's really going on? Well, the language used to describe the recent employment data, let's admit it, it's confusing. The Bureau of Labor Services, known as BLS, or BS if you want to be more particular, reported that the U.S. regained 9.3 million jobs since May. In reporting on those results, the business media characterized the jobs market as better than expected. Given that no one expected 22 million jobs to be lost, why should we use expectations as a meaningful gauge? Well, although it is encouraging to see improvement in employment amid this ridiculous scam of a pandemic, investors would be wise to avoid rose-colored lenses just yet. Despite the jobs gains, the U.S. still has about 12 million fewer people employed today as compared with February before the pandemic shutdowns hit the economy. Now, additionally, though down from over 15%, the unemployment rate remains extremely high, and that's only because they're massaging the numbers. If they were really truthful with you, you would really see what the real unemployment number really is. We still, ladies and gentlemen, have about 50 million people out of work. But they keep changing the numbers and, rounding it down, saying 20 million, 12 million, 10 million, because it sounds better than the real facts. Now, we like to go into things. We don't like to just dance around them. Not on this live. So job gains of the past 3 months are filling a vast employment crater formed by the COVID reaction, which was locking down the economy. Now, if you look at the U.S. job gains of the past 3 months, they've only just gotten back to the worst levels of the past 70 years. That's right. Any good news is still only gotten back to the worst levels of the past 70 years. So bear in mind that various adjustments make today's data look better than it is. It's just mathematical magic. All right. So, for example, according to the BLS, the formation of over 881,000 new jobs occurred over the last 3 months due to net business formations. However, the likelihood of that being true seems quite remote given the circumstances that we are currently facing. So, despite the narrative-driven journalism, it is evident from the labor market facts that the media's characterizations, the reasonings, seem to be going backward for some desired conclusion to the preferred V-shaped recovery story. They got to try to keep you on the narrative as long as possible. The narrative is, hey, we have a V-shaped recovery. No, we don't. No, we don't. We got an L recovery. Now, a term recently heard that fits is the narrative-driven journalism, which is just a euphemism for propaganda. All right? Narrative-driven journalism is just a euphemism for propaganda. It is the opposite of investigative journalism. We no longer have investigative journalism. We have narrative-driven journalism. Now, this is a symptomatic issue and one that resurfaces time and again in the evaluation of the economy's recovery from the virus shutdowns. Now, if we look at job losses as opposed to the unemployment rate, one gets another perspective on the enormity of the situation. All right, this is an enormous problem. It's not going away. Never before have you seen anything resembling the labor market devastation that we saw in April. It was catastrophic. One standard deviation of the monthly change in jobs between 1939 and 2019 is 223,000. Now, as a percentage of the workforce, the 1.3 million jobs lost in March was about 2.7% standard deviation from that. So the negative 21 million job report in April counts as a 35.7 standard deviation event. Now, the number is even more incomprehensible than the image that you can even place on any type of a chart. Devastating job losses during the 2008 financial crisis are barely even perceptible. Now, to be quite honest with you, when we talk about standard deviations, or when we talk about guidelines, or when we talk about, as far as how we evaluate market prices, things like that, normally markets move in about a 1 to 2% standard deviation from the mean. A rare event is a 3% standard deviation. Even rarer than that would be a 4 standard deviation. All right. And we have what these leprechauns that are at the 5 and 6 standard deviation levels. All right. Which is almost unheard of. All right. But you can hit a 3 from time to time, and that's considered extreme. Anything above 3 is considered extremely parabolic and catastrophic. All right. We're talking about 35.7 print standard deviation in these job reports. That is like, you can't even fathom that in your brain. All right. Now, employment in July rose by an impressive 1.8 million. As is mentioned, the economy has recovered over 9 million jobs since April, but you lost 50 plus million. See what I'm saying? So while on the surface it's encouraging, but for the people who lost their jobs in March and April, a majority remained out of work. Not only that, but a large percentage of those can also expect to once again be out of a job. Another 2.8 million people have left the workforce altogether. All right, so the BLS does not count them as members of the workforce. See how you can massage the numbers? Numbers don't lie, but accounting can be made to lie. So the results from a recent study conducted by Cornell's Daniel Alpert, the U.S. Job Quality Index, IQI, and the RIWI, indicate maintaining improvement in the labor market is unlikely. Once again, maintaining improvement in the labor market is unlikely. Finding a unicorn in your backyard with wings that is ready to fly you anywhere you want to go is unlikely. Furthermore, their work suggests that a sizable percentage of job gains are only temporary. And when you think about temporary employment, think about seasonal employment. All right, or those temp jobs that places like Manpower and facilities like that send you on. Now, the results of their survey illustrate the problems and the complexities associated with interpreting the job gains since May. Now, developed to test the vulnerability of U.S. employees to business failures once government support diminishes, their data reveals that concern is well-founded. Although not yet showing up in economic data, another round of layoffs is indeed occurring. The study suggests the problems in the labor market are much more significant and systemic and not isolated to those stats that experience another COVID-19 surge. Now, keep in mind, too, all week, I'll say actually over the last 2 weeks, there have been numerous announcements of future layoffs that are coming from a lot of big corporations. And I'm talking tens of thousands of jobs. Not 1,000 jobs, not a couple hundred, but tens of thousands of jobs. You can Google that. All right. Can't make this stuff up. So the model is not taking into account the already announced near future layoffs that are coming. Now, this trend is not labor's friend, all right? Looking back at prior recoveries, as shown in the chart below, employment rebounds are progressively more anemic. With that trend as evidence, the outlook for displaced workers and therefore the economy is very troubling, to say the least. Now, for the moment, the various forms of record stimulus are trying to prop up a very sick economy. They've been trying to prop up the economy for a long time. Now, massive stimulus obscures a reasonable assessment of economic fundamentals. Being a prudent steward of wealth demands that we attempt to draw sensible conclusions about the current environment and, more importantly, the economic outlook. Now, that task big undertaking. So, what are the political considerations of this employment situation, especially going into the election? Well, cities are the hardest hit cities by the virus are most certainly in peril. And then you add on all of the looting and rioting on top of that, and you start to see the fibers unravel. Now, for the nation's largest cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York, most of the things that make those cities exciting and dynamic remain shut down. They will have you to think that pretty much society's opened up already, but no, no. There's a lot of things still shut down. All right, it's just what it is. All right, you got a lot of restaurants and clubs and live music and sporting events and theaters. They're still struggling, and so a lot of them are still shut down. All right, they're going to have a lot of difficulty trying to rebound from a 5 or 6 month shutdown. They did not hold enough capital to survive such a pause in activity. Permanent changes to behavioral patterns will alter much even after cities fully reopen. Now, the respective mayors and governors mostly failed to understand the trade-offs between shutdowns and economic destruction until now. The irony is that reopening at this point will reveal the extent of the economic damage. For the politicians of those states hardest hit, that is a significant problem for them going into an election. Now, as former president of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker once said, we all know what needs to be done. We just don't know how to get reelected after doing it. Now, personal consumption represents about 70% of GDP. Therefore, no single piece of economic data is more important than the employment picture. It is not a matter of unjustified pessimism to urge a proper characterization of economic fundamentals. It's prudence. Although temporary encouraging, assuming the post-pandemic recovery will be robust or V-shaped, is disingenuous and an outright lie. Not only that, it encourages behavior and decision-making that is detrimental to the prospect of recovery. Now, given the profound uncertain outlook that we have, we should prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Put another way, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And I'm afraid a lot of Americans have already done that because when they were getting those extra $600, they were spending it. They weren't saving it. They weren't socking it away. They weren't doing any of that. All right. They just figured, well, after this, the government will just bail us out again and give us more money. And now they're seeing that that is not the case. That is not the case at all. So what do we got? Where do we go from here? I have no idea. I'm just giving it to you straight. I don't know. I know this, though. And this is something that you're not going to really hear pushed out in the media, but I think it's a little late. I think it should have been done, from the outset. But nevertheless, they are talking about it. So that's a good thing. But they need to do more than talk. So Trump has ordered the feds to begin process of defunding New York, defunding Portland, and also defunding other lawless cities. Now, the feud between Trump and liberal cities, which encourage the protests and the rioting and the looting, which seeking to defund the police, escalated sharply on Wednesday when the president ordered the federal government to begin the process of defunding New York City, Portland, Seattle, and Washington, cities where officials allowed the lawless protests and cut police budgets and rising violent crime, which is what we've been talking about, how these politicians are allowing this to go on, and they should be definitely not just lose their seats and be voted out, but they also should be arrested for domestic terrorism. In a 5-page memo sent to federal agencies on Wednesday, whose subject is reviewing funding to state and local government recipients of federal funds that are permitting anarchy, violence, and destruction in American cities, and signed by Trump, the president orders them to report to the White House Office of Management and Budget on any funding that could be redirected. New York City, Portland, Seattle, and even Washington, D.C. are among the initial targets of the measure. Quote, my administration will not allow federal tax dollars to fund cities that allow themselves to deteriorate into lawless zones, end quote, Trump says in a memo, which mentions New York Mayor Bill de Blasio by name twice. To ensue, the federal funding is not wasted or spent in a manner that directly violates our government's promise to protect life, liberty, and property. It is imperative that the federal government review the use of federal funds by jurisdictions that permit anarchy, violence, and destruction in American cities. Now, in a tweet late on Wednesday, Trump followed up the memo by saying that his administration will do everything in its power to prevent weak mayors and lawless cities from taking federal dollars while they let anarchists harm people, kill people, burn buildings, ruin lives and businesses. We're putting them on notice today. Whether Trump is a Democrat, Republican, or whatever, I think that is the correct move. However, it should have been done a long time ago. And again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm an independent. And to be honest with you, I think every Democrat and Republican should be put out of office ASAP and replaced with independents. Now, in the memo, Trump writes that the city of Seattle allowed anarchists and rioters to take over 6 square blocks of the city, an area that unlawful occupiers renamed Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And then the Capitol Hill occupied protests, notwithstanding the fact that law-abiding citizens live and work in the invaded area. The local government effectively endorsed this lawlessness and taking of property by, among other things, abandoning the Seattle's police department East Precinct building and forbidding the police force to intervene to restore order. Tragically, the mayor allowed the unlawful occupation to persist until 2 teenagers were killed and at least 2 other persons suffered gunshot wounds. On July the 1st, Seattle declared the protest zone dismantled. He also denounced the failed leadership in Seattle, whose mayor, Jenny Durkin, tolerated the local anarchists until protesters led by a city council member came to her own doorstep. Likewise, for New York, the memo said that the city has refused to prosecute rioters, rejected the offer of federal help, and cut the police budget despite an unconscionable rise in violence. See, this right here, this is what you call criminal behavior. This is not just someone who is incompetent. No, this is someone who is complicit in allowing this. This person should be brought up on charges and booted out of office immediately. In New York City, officials have allowed violence to spike. In late May and early June, state and local officials allowed looting to take place for over a week, resulting in damage to an estimated 450 businesses. You attack innocent people. If you're angry at the government, why are you attacking local mom and pop shops? You're hurting your own people. It doesn't make any sense. At least we could understand it if they were just attacking government buildings and certain Fortune 500 companies that they believe is complicit in some type of government conspiracy or what have you. I still wouldn't condone it, but I would understand the outrage. This is not that. This is just total anarchy. Now, as of August the 16th, there have been 896 shootings in New York this year, compared to 492 shootings during the same period last year. So we've almost doubled in crime. You've doubled in crime. How do you double in crime in a year? The shooting victims include children as young as 1 year old. Come on. So you're going to justify your outrage as reasonable to shoot a 1-year-old? Really? Shootings have been rising in recent weeks, and police reported 244 shootings last month compared to 88 in July of 2019, a 177% increase. While violence has surged, arrests have plummeted. In a 28-day period during the months of June and July, arrests were down 62% from the same period in 2019 amidst the rising violence. Mayor Bill de Blasio and the New York City Council agreed to cut $1 billion from the New York Police Department budget, including by canceling the hiring of 1,163 officers. The memo also cites New York Police Department Commissioner Dermot Shea's June disbandment of plainclothes units. Police officials have cited this decision as a factor contributing to the rise in violence, the memo says. Again, they also should be arrested. Everyone who is complicit in contributing to this anarchy should be brought up on federal charges. In Portland, Oregon, officials have allowed violent anarchists to unlawfully riot and engage in criminal activity on the streets, including the destruction of property. These rioters have repeatedly tried to destroy property in the city, including the federal courthouse. They have attacked federal law enforcement personnel protecting the federal courthouse with Molotov cocktails, mortar-style fireworks, hard projectiles, and lasers that can cause permanent blindness. Over several days in July, the rioters set fires in and around the federal courthouse. To date, at least 140 federal officers have been injured in Portland. Although I don't condone that, if this was the only thing going on, it would be more understandable. You still would have to put it down, but it would be more understandable. But this is not happening. If the only thing that was happening was in around the country, federal courthouses were being targeted, or Congress or Senate or the White House or something crazy like that, you don't condone that, but you would understand that. Because now it's targeted outrage. You're saying we're mad with the government, therefore we're coming for the government. You could understand that. You wouldn't condone it, but you would at least understand it, because innocent women and children aren't being hurt. Mom and pops are not being put out of business. You're aiming your anger at a particular place, which is your government. That would be understandable. Would not be condoned, but it would be understandable. But that's not what's happening here. Trump then goes on to slam state and local officials in Portland who have taken insufficient steps to protect the federal courthouse and initially reject offers of federal law enforcement assistance even after the apartment building of Portland mayor was set on fire. Again, more targeted, setting the mayor's apartment building on fire. That's targeted. It's understandable. Don't condone it, but now I understand that. See, that's different. The nation's capital was not spared from Trump's wrath. He said on that Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser allowed rioters and anarchists to engage in violence and destruction in late May and early June, requiring me to call in the National Guard to maintain law and order in the nation's capital. Predictably, the memo slammed the performance of Democratic mayors in each city, as well as state leaders. As a result of these state and local government policies, persistent and outrageous acts of violence and destruction have continued unabated in many of America's cities, such as Portland, Seattle, and New York. Once again, those officials who are allowing that to happen in their jurisdictions should be brought up on federal charges and sent directly to prison and immediately ousted out of office. Every single last one of them, no exceptions. OMB Director Russell Vought, who, according to the Post, applauded the review and the statement, was told to issue guidance on restricting eligibility of or otherwise disfavoring to the maximum extent permitted by law anarchist jurisdiction in the receipt of federal grants within 30 days, while AG Bill Barr was given 14 days to put together a list of anarchist jurisdictions that permitted violence and the destruction of property to persist and have refused to undertake reasonable measures to restore order. Vought told the New York Post that American taxpayers who fund the great programs that our cities rely on deserve to be protected by their local city officials. He added that the administration was exploring all options to ensure federal resources flowing to lawless cities aren't being squandered. The lack of law and order surrounding these riots and response from local leadership is a dereliction of duty. Men and women in blue cannot be handcuffed by local leadership in their efforts to respond to riots and protect their fellow citizens. If this was not an election year, ladies and gentlemen, none of these riots would be allowed to stand. None of them. None of them. The only reason why it's being allowed to stand is because they're trying to hurt Trump. They're saying, look, Trump can't govern because look at all the chaos and anarchy and rioting. All right. But the truth of the matter is it's up to the state to handle its business. And if it cannot, then it asks for federal help. And that's when the National Guard and all that stuff comes in. But keep in mind, the governor has the power to call in the National Guard. All right. The governor can do that. Governor can do that. He can call in, law enforcement. He can do that. The mayor can request it, but he doesn't have the power to call them up. A governor has the power to call in the National Guard. They can do that. But they're not doing that because they want Trump out of office and they're trying to make him look bad by keeping these riots going. That's why they are complicit in it and they should be arrested and sent to prison. All right. Now, and the memo was drafted prior to last week's incidents following the Republican National Convention when angry mobs attacked those in attendance, including Senator Rand Paul, in part because Bowser refused to allow additional security. See what they're doing? Now, that's not right. Now, that right there is not right. That's not right. Because when the Democrats are having their conventions, you want them to go all out and be protected. But when the Republicans are doing something, you want to do things on purpose to hurt them. See, it's the infighting, ladies and gentlemen. It's the infighting. They're on the same team. Don't get that twisted. But right now, it's a fight for power. All right, it's infighting. And it's getting very ugly and it's disgusting. That's why they all need to be set down and put into a timeout called federal prison. Every single last one of them because they're complicit. We'll get them out of here. You want to know what you can do, ladies and gentlemen? You always ask me for solutions. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? I just told you what to do. Now it's up to you to do it. You have to do it. I cannot vote in your city. I cannot vote in your state. You have to vote in your city, in your state. You got to get the bums out of office. Unless you really do want to go into Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. You want to turn the United States into the Thunderdome? Okay. Well, then do nothing. You don't have to do a thing. And that's exactly what you get. After months of referring to the frequent rioting and looting merely as peaceful protests, mainstream media outlets began blaming the riots on Trump after they themselves admitted that it makes Democrats look bad in the polls. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden denounced all violence earlier this week, but Republicans accused him of, in effect, threatening Americans with more violence unless they vote for him. Correct. Now you see what they are doing. All right, that's what they're doing. They're saying allow the violence and tell them the only way they'll get it out of here is if they vote for us. And then let's say they do win and they get in the office, I guarantee you immediately, like it never happened, the rioting and the looting would stop. That people would just disappear off the face of the street, leaving a big mess to clean up. And then they say, oh, this is a win-win for us. Now we can say we're hiring tens of thousands of people to help come and clean up these cities. See, we look what we've done. We've already given you jobs. We haven't even been in the office a day yet, and we already have rolled out these jobs. We're already producing more jobs than Trump has produced his entire presidency, and we just did this in 5 minutes. See, told you we take care of you. That's how it works. That's the evil that we're dealing with. That's the level of wickedness that we're dealing with. Now, in response to the memo, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo wasted no time in slamming President Donald Trump. And in a scathing statement Wednesday night, Cuomo said, from the point of view of New York City, President Trump is the worst president in history amid his threats to defund the city. Well, again, if you're already defunding the police on your own, how can you say he's bad for threatening to defund you as well? You defund your police. Now the government is saying, we want to defund you. Since you're doing a lousy job and you've defunded your police, well, we want to defund you too. How about that? So it's good when he does it, but it's bad when the president does it. Look, the best thing he did for New York City was leave, Cuomo said. Good riddance. Let him go to Florida. Be careful not to get COVID. Again, these ridiculous statements that are coming out of the mouths of elected politicians, people you elected. Cuomo all but threatened President Trump's safety if he returns to New York City during the emergency press briefing within a half hour on Wednesday night to tear into Trump for the order. He better have an army if he thinks he's going to walk down the street in New York. New Yorkers don't want to have anything to do with him, the Democrats said, all but threatening the commander in chief. Now, come on, you guys, let's keep it 100. If anyone said that, and this wasn't an election year, they would have been Secret Service would have been shown up on their doorstep instantly. FBI, Secret Service, you name it, would have been kicking the door in and taking dude out in handcuffs. You cannot threaten the president. Everyone knows that. You cannot threaten the president. But for some odd reason, it's being allowed to happen since Trump has been in office. He's received numerous threats from all types of people, even famous actresses. Remember that? And nobody did nothing. Madonna didn't get arrested when she threatened the president. None of them did. It was considered cool. But any other time, you would have been arrested. Let Clinton have been in office right now and see how fast that person would have been arrested. You know exactly what would happen. They would have sicked the IRS on the person. The person would have been arrested. All types of legal problems they would have been facing. And that's just straight up. All right. So, but see, Cuomo, who like Trump hails from Queens, he wasn't done. He can't have enough bodyguards to walk through New York City. People don't want to have anything to do with him. That's what he said. That's a quote from him. That's a direct threat. Cuomo said he doubted the legality of Trump's 5-page memo ordering a review of federal funds that can be redirected from New York City, Portland, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. It is more of the same from him. It's political, it's gratuitous, and it's illegal, but it's another attempt to kill New York City. No, you're killing New York City by allowing pandemonium without interference. You're allowing pandemonium in your city, and then you go and you defund your police department to the tune of $1 billion? Really? And you want to blame your stupidity on the president? Even people who hate Trump can see your stupidity. Good grief. All right, so you don't like the man, but does that mean you have to wreck your own city to prove what point? What? What are you proving? President Ford said, drop dead. President Trump has been actively trying to kill New York City since he's been elected, he said. Again, you do stupid things, make dumb choices, and then you want to put that on the president? Are people so brain dead that they are actually believing these statements and becoming influenced and triggered by these statements? Say, yeah, this is his fault. You defunded your police department to the tune of $1 billion. You did that. You said we're not going to hire over 1,100 new officers. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that. You are allowing pandemonium in your streets, and you want to put that on the president? That's like the dude walking into a hospital with grenades strapped to his body, blowing himself up and everybody in the hospital in the process. And right before he does, he says, "This is for you, Mom. All because you wouldn't let me go to that party back in 7th grade. I hope you're happy now," and he blows up. You see how stupid these politicians, they're letting you know. They're taking the masks off so you can see the ugliness that you have elected. And this is your fault, New York. You put this man in office. Cuomo also slammed Trump's handling of the COVID pandemic and said he is the cause of coronavirus in New York. It is his negligence that brought it here and his arrogance that he won't provide state and local funding to help states and cities recover from the pandemic that his negligence caused, Cuomo said. When he was asked what would happen if the federal funding goes away, Cuomo said that New York City receives roughly $7 billion a year in federal aid for housing, medical, health, and homeland security funding. I think it is because he is from New York City, and New York City rejected him always, Kumo said. He was dismissed as a clown in New York City, end quote. He may be a clown, but he is the clown who controls the money. And for the sake of Como, Trump better not get reelected, or else New York will soon transform into a hellhole it was for much of the 1970s and 1980s. So that's basically what is being said here. Again, it's full of stupidity. And I cannot believe that this is actually happening. It's happening. We can't pretend that it's not. This is the new normal. But wait, it gets better. It gets better. They have a plan. They got a plan. They got a plan. You are now leaving New York and entering into New Jersey. Welcome to New Jersey. New Jersey, home of the new ingenious plan to use high frequency trading tax to pay for social justice agendas. You thought New York was the only city that was bugging? Welcome to the state of New Jersey. After setting the stage for a new millionaire tax and hiking gasoline taxes by 22.5%, New Jersey, which has emerged as the most hated state in the U.S., which is home to both the incorrectly named New York Stock Exchange. The TV studio may be located in Manhattan, but the actual exchange with the microwave and laser towers is located in Mahwah. And the NASDAQ proposed a tax on high-frequency trading. Yet, while both former taxes were meant to shore up the state's depleted coffers, the purpose of the high-frequency tax was a mystery. That mystery was revealed earlier today when senior New Jersey administration officials said that revenue from a proposed tax on electronic Wall Street trading to expand his social justice agenda. You cannot make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. This is actually real. My thoughts and prayers are with you, New Jerseyans. New Jersey Governor Murphy saw the potential windfall as a shot to expand what he calls his stronger, fairer agenda to close New Jersey's wealth gap, according to the administration officials, who spoke on condition of anonymity because the legislation is in early stages. While to most, this simply means even more backroom dealings in one of the country's most corrupt states. To Murphy, this is the pursuit of nobility. Murphy prides himself in enacting free county college tuition for undocumented immigrants and expanding no-cost pre-kindergarten in needy communities. And by free, we of course mean paid for in the form of soaring taxes from all other documented and legal residents. You see, folks, this here is what you need to understand. You always hear people saying what they want to do. The Democrats want to promise you the moon and the sky and the stars, but they never answer the question, how are you going to fund that? How are you going to pay for it? Now you know. Now you know. They're going to take it from you and make you pay for it. Oh, did you think that wasn't going to happen? See, you don't understand. No matter what kind of terminology or prefix or suffix you want to put in front or behind of the word socialism, in the raw, it means to take from those that have by violent force to give to those that have not. That's what it means. So they're going to force you under the pain of violence to give your money to someone who probably doesn't deserve it because they haven't worked for it and they don't want to. So this is the problem with your agenda of socialism. They want to take by force and demand by force that you take your money and give it to someone else. They're not asking you to, be loving and to love thy neighbor and help those in need around you voluntarily. No, they're saying we're going to make you do it under the pain of force. You may die or you may be sent to prison if you don't comply. All right? That's what that means. Do this or else. You have no choice. Perhaps it's only fitting that those who benefit the most from high frequency trading end up paying a few pennies on the dollar for every dollar they make front running retail investors via their unofficial subsidy. Robinhood, something which the regulators finally figured out today. Additionally, Bloomberg reports that while any proceeds from levies on hundreds of millions of trades processed at data farms inside the states wouldn't be scored for the fiscal year that starts October the 1st, the bonanza from the first of its kind state tax could ultimately become a long-term annual source of revenue for New Jersey. This is the stupidity of your elected officials, ladies and gentlemen. Your government is showing up at your house armed to the teeth, threatening to blow your head off. This is a shakedown. You know what this is. You're being robbed. You're being stuck up at gunpoint by your elected officials. They're saying, give me this money or else I'm going to kill you or send you to prison. You choose, because that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. And isn't it funny that they're saying, look, you can trade now with no commissions. But what they're not telling you is you're going to be hit with something worse than commissions, because they're going to hit you now with a tax for every transaction you do as a high frequency trader. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not crying tears for high frequency traders. I believe that the high frequency trading thing is criminal because they get to front run other people's orders. If your broker front running your orders, it will be called criminal and they will go to prison. All right. It is illegal for your broker to front run your orders. Can't do it. In the olden days, you call your broker up on the phone, say, buy me 10,000 shares of Microsoft. He said, all right. And you say, work a good price for me, all right? He goes in, takes your order, but he places his trade first. He buys 10,000 for himself first. Then he puts your order behind him. That's called front running, and that is illegal. And you will go to prison for that. But high frequency traders are allowed to do it, and it's legal for them. But if anyone else did it, you go to prison. All right, that's how that works. Now, you may ask, what is the harm in doing that? Well, the harm is, and the rationale behind it is, what you do is sort of like the whole penny stock scandals. You get a whole bunch of people excited about a penny stock, and you get them to buy it, right? But what they don't know is you're already long thousands of shares or millions of shares. So then you want this tidal wave of large orders and heavy buying to come in and help push the price up, and you along with it. It's a good way to move the market without moving the market. Understand? So you, with your one lot, are getting the benefit of millions of shares coming in behind you to help push the price up. And then once it gets to a certain price, you heard them get out real quick and leave everybody else holding the bag. That's how that works. That's front running. High frequency trading is doing that a million times over because they're able to trade millions of trades in a split second, and they get to buy data from other firms like Robinhood, who sells their data to them. That's how they're funding their operation. That's how they're able to give you trading for free without any commissions. Commissions was never a bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. I need you to understand that. Even when I started, when commissions could range anywhere from $75 per round turn up to $200 and sometimes $300 per trade per round turn, people still made ridiculous amounts of money. All right. It's never been about the commissions. The commissions only hurt you when you are losing. Commissions are a slap in the face when you're losing, and they can rack up, they can add up rather significantly when you're doing a lot of trading. So here we have the high frequency traders making millions of trades a day being taxed on that, which would act basically as a commission. So basically, the state of New Jersey is saying we want a commission for all your trades. And since they can't say commission, they just make it a tax. All right. So that's what's going on. What they don't understand is that these high frequency traders will just move out of the state. They just move. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking already. No, that wouldn't work. They wouldn't do that because of the way everything is set up. They got their servers at the exchange. They got these dedicated cable lines that's running miles and miles under the ground, directly feeding directly into the servers at the exchanges. That's how they're able to do what they do. Without that, they wouldn't be able to do it, yada, yada, yada. I hear your point, but you're forgetting something. You see, all you have to do is move away and do it another way. There's another way to do it. There's technology where you can still do that. Yeah, it is. It is. Don't tell me you can't do it, because you can do it. It can be done. Before they were doing this, there was still computers trading very large volume before you had high frequency trading. High frequency trading is a thing of the new millennium. Prior to this, it didn't exist. So, that's not going to work either. All right, they're always going to find a way to do what they do. Before that, you had the dark pools. Remember, they made ways to get around it for those that had the money. The exchanges always pimped. They always did that. They always made ways for those with the money to get around and skirt law and do things like that. Because remember, the level 2 NASDAQ quotes and all that was hurting a lot of big companies, because it would say Goldman Sachs is buying 20 million shares of Microsoft, and you would see that and you would hurry up and you would buy whatever you could afford amounts of Microsoft, because now you see Goldman Sachs is moving and you want to move with it. So everyone wanted the level 2 quotes so they could see who was buying what and they could move with them. So then they say, the big firms start complaining, saying, this ain't good. They can see what we're doing. We don't want them to see what we're doing, but we like to see what they're doing. What can you do for us? Okay, here enters the dark pools. Now you got dark pools where the big boys can play with each other, and the little guy can't see a thing and doesn't know what's hitting them. All right, but then there's ways around that too, because technology exists as it does today where we can know what's going on. Enter the pulse waves. So I'm not a high frequency trader, but I do know exactly what they're doing, and I know how to beat them at their own game. And that's what I do at PulseWaveTrading.com, and you can do it too. But the point is, all people will do is just move out of New Jersey, and then this law will fall right on its face. All they're doing is killing themselves. You have a splinter in your foot, and so you take your double barrel shotgun and blow your foot off. That's exactly what New Jersey is doing with this ridiculous bill, with this ridiculous tax. You're just going to force all of those people to leave. Now what? Now what? So it's gonna blow up in their face. And keep in mind, New Jersey and New York are probably the biggest fraud states in the union and have been for a very long time. And I'm speaking from a place of authority. They had the most medical crimes in the United States. As far as medical fraud, like Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud, New Jersey and New York. New Jersey beat New York slightly. Some years New York would win that race, and other times it would be New Jersey. Yeah, it was not uncommon for medical bills to come in the tune of $50,000 bill, $40,000 bill for a bunionectomy. Yeah, exactly. Not making that up. That really happened. So, with that being said, I'm not surprised that they're trying to bring this into law. It's going to blow up in their face. Even if they do pass it and they win it, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay. Now, I'm going to end it with more twisted thinking. Are you ready? Here we go. Scientism. So, science deniers delaying herd immunity is costing lives. All right, now we get to talk some science. All right, so this is according to the American Institute for Economic Research. Climate scientists are frustrated by people who do not believe in climate change. In epidemiology, our frustration is with anti vaxxers. Most anti vaxxers are highly educated but still argue against vaccination. We now face a similar situation with anti herders who view herd immunity as a misguided optional strategy rather than a scientifically proven phenomenon that can prevent unnecessary deaths. So, we're talking about science deniers. Science versus scientism. Now, because of its virulence, widespread in many asymptomatic cases, it causes COVID-19 cannot be contained in the long run, and so all countries will eventually reach herd immunity. To think otherwise is naive and dangerous. General lockdown strategies can reduce transmission and death counts in the short term. But this strategy cannot be considered successful until lockdowns are removed without the disease resurging. So the choice we face is stark. One opinion is to maintain a general lockdown for an unknown amount of time until herd immunity is reached through a future vaccine or until there is a safe and effective treatment. This must be weighed against the detrimental effects that lockdowns have on other health outcomes, something you're not hearing talked about. The second option is to minimize the number of deaths until herd immunity is achieved through natural infection. Most places are neither preparing for the former nor considering the latter. We call them science deniers. The question is not whether to aim for herd immunity as a strategy, because we will all eventually get there. The question is how to minimize casualties until we get there. Since COVID-19 mortality varies greatly by age, this can only be accomplished through age-specific countermeasures. We need to shield older people and other high-risk groups until they are protected by herd immunity. Among the individuals exposed to COVID-19, people aged in their 70s have roughly twice the mortality of those in their 60s, 10 times the mortality of those in their 50s, 40 times that of those in their 40s, and 100 times that of those in their 30s, and 300 times that of those in their 20s. The over 70s have a mortality rate that is more than 3,000 times higher than children have. For young people, the risk of death is so low that any reduced levels of mortality during the lockdown might not be due to fewer COVID-19 deaths, but due to fewer traffic accidents. Now, considering these numbers, people above 60 must be better protected, while restrictions should be loosened on those below 50. Other people who are vulnerable should stay at home. Food should be delivered and they should receive no visitors. Nursing homes should be isolated together with some of the staff until other staff who have acquired immunity can take over. Younger people should go back to work and school without older co-workers and teachers at their sides. While the appropriate magnitude of countermeasures depends on the time and place, as it is necessary to avoid hospital overload, the measures should still be age dependent. This is how we can minimize the number of deaths by the time this terrible pandemic is over. And by the way, the majority of hospitals in the United States were virtually empty during this entire lockdown. They were empty. Empty. Remember the videos of nurses and doctors dancing? Dancing? You don't have time to dance if there's a pandemic because so many bodies are coming into the hospital. You don't have time to dance and make social media videos. You just don't. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to open our eyes to reality of what's going on among us and around us. And I'm telling you, it is not looking good. It is not looking good. Winter is coming, and it's coming sooner than you think. With that being said, remember PulseWaveTrading.com. We do have a webinar coming up tomorrow. And for more information on that, you're going to want to go to PulseWaveTrading.com so you can register, sign up, and all that good stuff. And remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. And I'm out. Peace.